Good afternoon, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to this Wednesday's episode of Rift Amps. Before we get going, I just want to do a little bit of admin, bit of house admin. We have got Planet Caravan, Boromedic, Mr. Dreadeye, Waterbeach 2000, Lion Circle, Greg Smith, and Nick Elliott, who are all channel members for over 12 months. Absolutely amazing. My name was Teco, Andy Davis, Jeffrey Lebowski, Gaz Cal, Jeremy Watson, Gary Francis, Robert Pichora, Emilio Nava, DBPWNZ, JT4527, Robert Barnes, Chris LX200, David Comegys, Mike M, The Allotment Bubble, and Jeremy Lewis are all approaching that 12-month period. So thank you to everyone who is a channel member. It's amazing. I really appreciate the support. Whatever level of channel membership you have, it's amazing. Thank you so much. And I've got loads more channel members too. Again, I'll give you all you guys a shout out when you hit your milestones, but just thank you so much. And welcome back. Q&A time. First full day back in the workshop since my summer break, and it's raining outside. It's cold. It's miserable. And I'm back staring at amplifiers when I could be on a beach with a cocktail. But, you know, it is what it is. Actually, I tell a lie, I was starting to get a little bit itchy, wanting to get back and start doing amp stuff again. So, yeah, I'm sure I'll get back into the swing of things. I've got loads of stuff to do. And actually, yeah, there's some stuff I really can't wait to get out the door, get finished, you know, get done for customers, or get their amplifiers done for them, I should say. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's nice to be back. As I said, I got lots to do. Had a lovely time away. I hope you enjoyed the content that I put out in the meantime. I'm sorry it wasn't the usual stuff, but you know, I tried my best. We've got, I mean, what is it now? I mean, realistically, we're halfway through the summer. You can call this weather the summer. And then, yeah, it's a downward slope to Christmas, really, isn't it? I don't know if you lot prefer that time of year or not. I don't know. But problem for me is that spring, summer, and autumn for me is race season, and that's what I look forward to. And when there's no racing, and it's cold, and it's wet and miserable, and the pavement's always greasy, and it's short days, long nights. I just don't like it. But some people love that, don't they? I never quite understood that. But some people like that, that coziness, being inside on a cold winter night, I guess. But yeah, if it's not race season, I'm not happy. Anyway, so I know what I was going to talk to you about. I had an offer to start playing in a function band. I do some depth work every now and again, fill in for people on bass and whatnot. And I was approached saying, did I want to take on more and be a permanent member of this quite successful, quite good function band. And I really started to give it some thought. I think, yeah, maybe that's what I want to do. I don't want to do it on guitar because, as most of you know, I'm here all day working on guitar amps, playing guitar, testing them, and it becomes a bit of a busman's holiday, going out and playing guitar in the evening. That's kind of where I fell out of love with playing guitar live, and that's where picking up the bass and doing bass stuff kind of turned that around for me, because you get the enjoyment of gigging, but it's kind of different, if you know what I mean. It has a different feel to it, a different approach. You're really focused on locking in with the drummer and delivering all those lines and stuff and getting that groove right. And so I really started enjoying doing that. It gave going out and gigging a fresh lease of life. Do you know what I mean? A new page or whatever. I'm sure there's a better way of explaining that. So anyway, I've been approached by a great group, an absolutely fantastic group of musicians. Do I want to come and join them on bass? And it's really tempting because it's also the stuff that I really love to play. So a lot of disco, a lot of R&B, a lot of smooth jazz, stuff like that. Some really cool, some yacht rock stuff. Love all playing those lines. And I'm really, 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 I reckon I was this close to saying yes, but I thought about it and I realised I can't commit to that. And the reason I can't commit to that is that the main wedding season is also race season. And you can guarantee that because racing has priority for me, you can guarantee that there'll always be clashes where they say, right, we've got gigs on these dates, and I'll be looking at the race calendar saying, I can't do it because I'm racing. And you can't be that guy. If you can't commit properly to a function band like that, it just doesn't work. So I've had to say no. I've had to turn that down, which I'm actually a little bit disappointed, but because I would like to do more stuff like that, especially taking the Bassman 135 out, because that's a great sounding amp. But it's one of those, where do your priorities lie? And the worst thing I would want to happen is for bass work, bass gigs to become a bit mundane, and I get into that mode where I don't want to do them anymore. And that would happen, especially if I was losing out on racing. So yeah, this is a tough one. It really is a tough one. But I'm sure I'll find a solution. If weddings were only ever done in the winter, then it'd be great because I could race in the summer, gig in the winter. Wouldn't mind that. Maybe I just need to join a Christmas act. Maybe that's the answer. Anyway, we've had quite a few questions and comments over the past couple of weeks. Lots to talk about, lots to go through. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to save some of them up for future Q&As, so we can always make sure we get enough content and enough variability. Is that what I want to word it? Enough variety. God, my brain is not working today. So yeah. Anyway, should we crack on? Rodney Smotherman. Rodney's Mothermon. Sorry, Rodney, I've absolutely butchered that. I was talking about the 23mm toggle switches, which is a bit of an odd size because the step drill bits usually come in even numbers, so 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, etc. I do actually have one in the odd sizes, but it's not accurate enough for those toggle switches. And the problem is, if it's undersized, obviously, if you cut a hole that's undersized, obviously it won't fit. And if it's slightly too large, then you'll get a gap around the edge, which looks terrible and it's not good enough. So I need a cutter that cuts a hole exactly the same size as that toggle switch. And so thank you to everyone who sent in suggestions of things you found and things to check out. Rodney said use a 7/8 Imperial drill bit, which is close, but it's only 22.28mm, I think. So we're still going to be quite a long way off on that. And then you've still got to ream it out or enlarge it further. What I really need, I guess, and this is something I've been thinking about doing, is getting myself a proper laser engraver and a laser cut machine, so I can do all my faceplates in-house, and then you can cut stuff to whatever size you need. I had a quick look. They are not cheap. They are not cheap at all. But I think for the future, it's something I need to look at, is bringing my control panel work in-house. Not just for lead times, because that's not really an issue, but it's the the control over it, the ability to do stuff on the fly. Someone said to me, why don't you do them as, you can get a UV printer and do it that way. That's great. Yeah, you can do faceplates with a UV printer, but you've still got to do the holes. And you can't UV print a hole. Right, so you've still got to do drilling work. Where with a laser engraver, it will just buzz that out for you, or zap it out, I guess. Anyway, God, is that 9 minutes of waffling already? Thanks for the comment, Rodney. Thanks to everyone else who sent suggestions in about 23mm cutters. I am on the lookout. What I really need is a recommendation from somebody who's actually got one and has used it and knows the results it delivers, rather than just sending me a link to somewhere that sells something. I need a real world usage example, so I know exactly how good they are. But we'll keep working on it. As I said, I do have a stepless drill bit, so I can creep up on that size and get it right. But all it takes is one bit of pressure too much, and you've oversized it. And even if it's a tiny, tiny slither oversized, it will look crap, and we don't want that. Right, moving on. Regular commenter Russ says, hi Chris, I need a bit of clarification on speaker sensitivity. My Valve hi-fi amp has 4 and 8 ohm speaker taps, but my speakers are 6 ohms. Which taps should I be using, 4 or 8? Valves are 5881s and the amp is rated at 21 watts. I'm not sure how to choose. Great question. Bloody hi-fi having these 6 ohm speakers. It's bizarre, isn't it? It's absolutely bizarre. I assume the problem is what you haven't told me is I assume you've got 2 speakers, one either side. Are they both 6 ohm, or are they 12 ohm, so you've got 6 ohm in parallel, or are they both 3 ohm and you've got 6 ohm in series? I don't know the output of the amplifier, so I don't know what you've got, whether you've got 2 sockets in parallel or whatever. You need a bit more information there. But what I will tell you is the rated impedance of speakers is nominal. I mean, it's the average impedance across the frequency range. So they will have a different impedance at, I don't know, 500 hertz than they will do at 1 kilohertz, and they will do at 5 kilohertz. So you're probably over worrying about it, especially given that it's valve gear. Now, I've actually been through this before with my own hi-fi unit. Actually, no, not that one, but the previous one I used to use, which I recovered from an old valve radiogram. Took that unit, added a 6.3mm input, so I could plug an Alexa or a iPod or something into it. And I drove my bookshelf speakers, which are also 6 ohm. Now, I ran them on the 4 ohm tap, right? Now, as we know before, and I've mentioned this, often with guitar stuff, not always the case, and it is usage dependent and it's application dependent, all that kind of stuff. I always recommend, if you're unsure, you would plug into the higher impedance. So if you've got 6 ohm speakers, you'd use the 8 ohm tap. So there's less of a load on the valves themselves, but that's not always the case. And you can do things like you can measure the output power with both modes. In fact, there's a great video by El Paso Tube Amps who did this recently. He was measuring output power with different loads. Fascinating to watch, actually. But in your case, yeah, that's what I do. I wouldn't worry about it too much. You could, given that it's valve gear, just use your ears. Which one sounds best to you? Which one has the broadest range? Which one has most clarity and detail? That's often what you want to be looking at. But you're certainly not going to damage anything by running 6 ohms in either to 4 or an 8 ohm tap. The transformer and the valves simply won't care. Bad news, another brand is gone or closing down. I don't know if you saw this, but I was just browsing guitar.com for all my latest news. And I saw that John Hornby Skews, JHS, now that's not JHS pedals in the US, this is a British firm, have announced that they're closing down after, what have they put, over 60 years in business. JHS owns the Vintage, Encore, and Fret King brands, as well as being one of the UK's largest distributors, currently supplying the UK market with Dan Electro, Godin, Donna, Lava Music, Shub, the capos and stuff, Wilkinson, and many others. Now, it goes on to say, and this is what I find a little bit confusing, JHS is at pains to point out that the closure has nothing to do with financial troubles. And in fact, they're still profitable. Nothing to do with financial troubles that have dogged the UK music retail sector, but due to a rather unique set of circumstances spurred on by the death of the company founder, John Hornby Skews, in September of last year. Okay, so that does make sense. I hadn't read that far. In a statement from JHS, they said these unique circumstances, the JHS business compromises of a property company and a trading company, both majority owned by family trusts set up by the late John H. Skews. The settler of those trusts stated that after his death, the company should be sold. So maybe that's what they're doing. Steps have been taken in the last few months to try and secure a buyer. Thus, this far has not been possible. So maybe, investors are looking at the whole musical instrument industry, and they don't see it as viable anymore. Blah, blah, blah. So they've decided, because they can't sell it, they've concluded that to achieve the settler's mandate, a process of conducting an orderly winding down of the company will commence with immediate effect. The company stresses that this is not a liquidation or administration process and that JHS is entirely solvent. It anticipates that its closure process may take up to 12 months. Sorry, let me just get that right there. The process may take up 12 months as it continues to trade, downsizing along the way, gradually disposing of its stock and assets, including its valuable trademarks and other IP, which will be sold to the highest bidder. Wow, I mean, yeah, I get it, I understand, but if you're trading solvently, i.e. you are making money, you're making business, you're doing well, it would be, surely someone will come along and buy it. And so if they can't find a buyer, it's only fair to ask the question, why not, right? And that's what I don't understand. Not their decision to wind down, but as to why they can't find a buyer. And as I said earlier, are investors now just scared of the musical instrument industry? Is it really that bad? I don't know. Let me know what you think. But I feel like there's still something missing here. And it's not just UK brands, is it? We've had major European retailers disappear as well. What's going on? Is the guitar industry just too... Is toxic the word to invest in now? Too unstable? I don't know. It feels bizarre. It feels odd. I certainly feel like something doesn't quite add up. So, yeah, I just found that really interesting. Really interesting indeed. Anyway, sad news anyway, because, as far as I can remember, they've been like a a constant presence in the UK guitar industry as JHS. So it's a shame, but I guess everything changes and moves on. But yeah, I mean, who's going to be a distributor for those other brands as well? Lots of questions that need answering, I guess. Lots of questions. W.S. Scott, again, a regular commenter. Welcome back to the channel, mate. He says, Chris, you commented about working with Ainsley and designing the sound of your amps, bearing his approval. And I would like to know more about the sound designing process, but in simple terms. You did a great job with the explanation on how coupling caps process AC/DC signals, and I'd like to learn more about how changing resistors, caps or pots affect the sound/tone of the amplifier. Don't forget, we also focus on the feel and response. I'm working with a buddy on a 1947 Valco, and his amp only has a single tone pot, so it's probably a high pass filter. And this amp only and the sound has a lot of bass with very little treble range. So I'd like to figure out what to do to improve its range of treble and reduce the range of bass. Thanks, as always, for a great series. You are more than welcome. Great question. Absolutely brilliant question. This is the way I approach it. Because really you've asked two questions there. Whether I'm designing an amp from the beginning, from scratch, which is a different process that you go through, compared to tweaking the sound of an amplifier that already exists, right? In your situation, I always work backwards. It means I start with the output stage of the amplifier, or the very end, and I work towards the beginning, the preamp. So I would first of all ensure that is there anything you can do with the speaker? Try a few different speaker examples. If it's got an Alnico speaker in it, try a ceramic. That always tightens up the bottom end. Try different wattage speakers. Try different size voice coils, bits and pieces like that. Just try different speakers. I mean, I don't know what that one's got in it, but often you can make huge tonal changes to an amplifier, both bottom and top end, just by changing the speaker. If, however, you are happy with the speaker, go to the previous stage in the circuit, which will be the output stage. Specifically, what I would be looking at is just the two coupling caps if it's a push-pull amplifier, or a single coupling cap if it's single-ended, that feeds the output valves. And if you've got too much bottom end, I would focus, if you're saying you've got a lot of bottom end but not a lot of range in the top, I would start by experimenting by reducing the size, the value, the capacitance rating of those coupling caps. I'd drop them down. And I would, let's say, I mean, I don't know the amplifier, but let's say they are 100 nanofarad, which is a pretty common value on the older designs, 1947. Maybe it's got 100 nanofarad in, 0.01 microfarad. I would drop it all the way down to 10 nanofarad, so 0.01 microfarad. Swap those in and use your ears. Have a listen. What's that done? Now, by often, if you're saying it hasn't got enough treble, it could be that the bass is just too much. And by bringing the bass down, the treble, even though you haven't touched the treble, suddenly becomes more prominent relative to the bottom end. So rather than trying to increase that up, you drop this one down and you get a similar effect, right? Try that first. Also remember that treble frequencies are really easy to generate, bass frequencies more difficult. So therefore, if they're more difficult to generate, they might be easier to manipulate. So again, try those. Once you try the 10 nanofarad, if you find it's too much, increase the value, 22, 47, find that, maybe even 33, somewhere in the middle. Find that sweet spot. And use your ears. What's changed? Has the clean tone changed for good or for better? What about the edge of breakup tones? What about the fully cranked tone? What's that doing? Use your ears and learn and listen. And this is what I say to people who only ever focus on the pure mathematics of it. Use your bloody ears. That's what they're there for. This is audio, right? Once you've used your ears and you understand what's going on, then go and look at the books and do your sums and to understand what's gone, why that change has happened and what's actually happened. Once you've refined the back end of the circuit, again, you keep moving towards the front end. One thing that an example I always like to give is probably not for guys who watch this channel, but if you ever look at the super high gain metal amplifiers, you know, the ones that the death metal shredders use, right? If you look at the size of the coupling caps in those amps, they are minuscule, often no larger than 1 nanofarad. And there's a reason for that, because they are trying to EQ and shape the bottom end all the way through, and they are trying to keep it under control all the way through the amp, because they want the bottom end to be pushed and generated in certain parts of the circuit and not in others. So if you ever look at a schematic for one of those super high gain metal, the type of amp that, I don't know, Slipknot would use or something, look at those schematics and see what they're doing. I know it's an extreme example, but they're often not focusing on top end. They're focusing on bottom end. Actually, I say this about bass amps as well. Bass amps are all about the top end. The bottom end is, you know, kind of the easy bit. They just keep it under control. The magic's in the top end. So, but that might be because they've got the bottom end exactly where they want it. Hopefully that was easy to follow, not too complicated. But yeah, my process is always start at the back end of the amplifier and work towards the preamp in terms of shaping. I find that often gives you the quickest answers to your questions, the quickest results, and then speeds up that learning process. Midnight Hour, welcome back, mate. Haven't heard from you in a while, or if you have, or I have, sorry I missed you. Hi Chris, you may find this video interesting to how Dr. Z builds his amps, and he's included the link there. Yes, absolutely. It's a great video. I have watched it. It's always fascinating to see. Obviously, in that video, what I found most interesting was not the overall build process and what he's doing, but it's all those little tiny tips and tricks that he's learned over the years to stop things like rattles, buzzes, oxidization, etc., etc., etc. And I guess that's part of the reason you guys tune into me as well, because you'll see me doing all these little tricks and going, why is he doing it that way? There's always a reason, and that you learn from mistakes. And you say, actually, if I do it that way, it might seem odd, but it prevents this happening 5 years down the line when the amp's been on the road for a number of years and it's been abused. It stops certain things happening. And it's fascinating. It's a great video. And I love that they still build the amps that way. It's not all PCB rubbish. He's cranking out amplifiers the way I like to think they should be built. You know, that the whole hand wired, building a proper audio circuit with good techniques, good best practice, all that kind of stuff. It's just nice to see. So yeah, it's a great video. You just go onto the Dr. Z YouTube channel, you will find the video. It's definitely worth a watch. I'm sure most of you have seen it anyway, but yeah, I get a lot from those videos because often I will pick up stuff myself and say, oh, that's a good way of doing that. I haven't thought of it that way. But sometimes you get validation as well, because you see that somebody has worked out the same thing that you worked out, and you think, yeah, okay, I was on the right track when I was doing that, and vice versa, whatever it is. It's great, yeah, but it's a great video. Go and watch it. So just scrolling the rest of the news over on guitar.com, and I've seen something that fascinating. Are you ready for this? Guitar Center employee admits to using rude customers' credit cards to steal over $5,000. A Guitar Center employee from Ohio used customers' credit cards for personal purchases after they were rude to him, reports claim. Management allegedly learned of the purchase after a customer called about a transaction made at the store that was not his. The transaction was not his, not the store. The employee, 18, is also believed to have copied the credit cards of 2 other customers. Wow. The report comes from news outlet Cleveland.com, which says a further investigation revealed that the employee had charged $5,087 to the other 2 credit cards, and claims the man chose customers as victims who were rude to him, used foul language, and made situations bad for him. Right, yeah. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, obviously it's awful, but I know we've all secretly wanted to, shoot rude customers, but that's stealing their credit card. I mean, that's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. The report does not clarify the outcome of the investigation or what happened to the employee since the thefts occurred. I mean, he's got to have been fired and the police contacted, right? Obviously. In other Guitar Center news, the company's CEO said he wasn't afraid of competition from large brands like Gibson or Fender in a recent interview. His comments arrive on rising competition as more brands continue to sell directly to their customers. Okay, so that's a comment on, a lot of brands now doing direct to customer rather than going through the retailer route, which I guess puts a lot of guitar shops out of business. And that's a conversation for another day. Laurie Harper says, what does Laurie say? Great news that you were working with Zilla. Paul made me a bass cab some years ago when he was still in southwest London. That was absolutely excellent. It was built like a tank. Yep, absolutely. And in fact, I'm glad you mentioned bass amps because bass cabs, because I'm thinking about ordering one of his ported bass cabs, the 2x12. I really want to try it, so that's on my to-buy list. I've been quite impressed with the whole Zilla thing so far. It's just been great. We'll see how it goes. My cab struggles are long documented. It's partly down, and I've said this before, it's down to the standards that I expect and demand from cabinet makers. The problem with that is that cabinets, there's not enough money in cabinets. You can't charge what you need to unless you're a huge manufacturing firm churning out hundreds, maybe even thousands of cabinets a week. It's very difficult to make enough money on cabinets to survive. It's just tough. It's really tough, especially here in the UK. Manufacturing in the UK is so expensive. So there are a lot of cabinet makers out there here in the UK, and either their workmanship isn't up to snuff, the quality materials they're using isn't there. Some of them, a trained cabinet maker, and by that someone who can stick together a wooden box, might not have the experience to tune a cabinet for audio. And this is something I've experienced time and time again, is that these guys say, I can put you together a speaker cabinet, but they don't understand how baffles work and resonate. And especially if they don't play guitar, they don't speak the language and they don't understand it. And so you end up with very dead and flat sounding, not flat in a good way, not flat EQ curve. I mean just unalive, a dead cabinet, right? And so they struggle. And the guys who do it are either extremely slow, or sorry, the guys that can do it to the level and standard that I want, demand, need, whatever, are extremely slow or very expensive, right? And I don't mind either of those. I'm happy for that. But I'm always happy to pay for quality, and I'm always happy to wait for that. Some customers aren't, right? And you get into that awkward thing. So Paul is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. The quality of the stuff is there. Obviously, you know, as a business, I would like to not be paying Paul's prices, but you know, that's one thing. I'm happy to pay for quality, but like any business, you'd always want things cheaper. But it's just the way it is. I'd rather have, would I rather have a cheap cabinet that sounds crap, or would I rather have an expensive cabinet that sounds fantastic? It's a no-brainer. You'd rather have, you know, an expensive cabinet that sounds fantastic, because that's ultimately what matters, right? And so, and the best thing about Zilla is that he's got the manufacturing capability to deliver these things at a faster rate than my other guys can. So between all three of them, we should be getting a nice steady stream and supply in now. So that's kind of where we are. There was another comment about cabinets. It was from Ray, who said, Chris, would it not be advantageous for you to set up a cab shop in the back of your shop and hire a couple of carpenters to make cabs? I think in the long run it'll work out cheaper. It's something I've thought about. In fact, on the farm here there are two cabinet shops. Well, there's one kitchen cabinet shop, so they've got all the wood cutting and making capability, and there's also a joinery firm as well, guys who make the most amazing window frames and lean-tos and gazebos and pergolas and all that sort of stuff. But again, if they don't work in audio, they don't play guitar, they don't know. I don't have the space here in my shop to do it, nor do I have the capital to buy the equipment to do it to the standard that's required, nor do I have the demand, as in I would need to be selling 3 or 4 times the number of amplifiers per week for me to justify doing that, purely from a business perspective. So and to employ the guys, I mean, a carpenter's or cabinet maker's day rate now is, you know, get a good one, it's quite a lot of money, and deservedly so. If you know, as I said, if you want that skill set, you want the best, you've got to pay for it. You know, if you find a cheap carpenter, you've got to ask yourself, why are they so cheap, right? And it's not because of goodwill. It will be because, you know, they're not quite there yet. So yeah, I've thought about it a lot. It would be the ultimate dream would be to have everything in house. Of course it would, but it's not financially viable. The learning curve for me, if I was going to do it myself, building cabinets would take up so much of my time, it would easily double my lead times, and some of them are already ridiculous. So I just can't justify it. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. It's one of those great difficult decisions that you have to make sometimes, I guess, isn't it? See, if I ran this business in America, it would be completely different. There are cabinet makers galore out there. There are huge cabinet shops who I could ring up and say, right, I need 20 of those, 40 of those, 5 of those, whatever, and they would build them and deliver them very quickly. You know, a lot of these firms that I compete with, American boutique brands that I compete with, you know, they get everything from Mojo or from that other place that does the tweed stuff. And cabinets are just not an issue for them. Whereas here in the UK, if you want British made, you want it to the absolute highest standard, it's difficult. and it's tough. But I won't give up. I love it. I love the struggle. I love the fight. I love trying to work it all out and get it, and constantly trying to improve what we're doing in every aspect all the time. It's tough, but I guess that's why people come to me, because they don't want off-the-shelf mundane stuff. They want the best, and they want somebody who cares about what they're doing in every aspect. So we shall keep the fight going. And finally, more doom and gloom. Fernandez Guitars has entered bankruptcy proceedings once again. I didn't even know they went through it in the first place. Wow. But this time there is some hope that the legendary guitar brand, Japanese guitar brand, might continue in some form. This news arrives after the company previously filed for bankruptcy back in July 2024. Shortly after, Fernandez withdrew its petition, but the company hasn't made announcements since. Now, however, a Tokyo-based news outlet has confirmed that the company has refiled bankruptcy, with filings claiming that the brand has amassed a total debt of around 730 million yen, which is about 4.9 million US dollars. The Tokyo District Court granted permission for proceedings to begin on the 9th of July. An interesting wrinkle to the new filing, however, is the confirmation that part of the Fernandez trademark has been transferred to another company in advance of those proceedings. While no details have been revealed at this stage, it could potentially mean that Fernandez will continue in some part. Bit of background on Fernandez here. Fernandez's history begins in 1969, and it grew to become a go-to provider for budget import guitars. In addition to making guitars, Fernandez is also widely known for its Sustainer pickup. Yeah, that rings a bell. The Sustainer pickup, which is widely used by other brands as an aftermarket add-on. Ah, okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Ah, yeah. Billy Joe Armstrong, the frontman for Green Day, he's got his famous S-Type is a Fernandez. That's the one with the slanted pickup, isn't it? Having owned it since the age of 11. Well, there you go. Other notable Fernandez players include Ed O'Brien of Radiohead and Robert Fripp of King Crimson. Is it all doom and gloom in this industry now? Is that all we've got? Is that all we've got? Just doom and gloom and bad news across the board. It feels that way. It does feel that way a little bit. What am I doing? And I just wonder, when are we actually going to get some good news? Just overall, generally, right? When are we actually finally going to get good news? Do you remember back when I did the NAMM news roundup? And it was the whole theme of NAMM was budget lines of guitars. Budget this, budget that. Everything's going budget. Here's our new affordable line, etc., etc., etc. Do you remember? And it seemed that was the buzzword and the trend for the industry. And there was not many. Well, I mean, apart from that, there wasn't really many success stories or good news stories. It was all everyone's trying to have a race to the bottom and to survive. What is going on? Let me know in the comments what you think. But isn't it fascinating? Changing times for a changing world. Ha! Just a couple of minutes ago, on camera, I was moaning about the weather. It's grey and miserable and it's wet out there. Well, I've just popped outside to grab something from the car. It stopped raining. It looks, I mean, it's cold here in the workshop. It's not warm. I mean, it's not cold, but, you know, I'm in a t-shirt, right? But it's, you know, it's not hot. But I've just stepped outside. It is humid as anything. So we've just come off the back of the third heat wave here in the UK. We've had bounces of incredibly hot weather followed by, you know, a dip, and then it gets really hot again. You know, so we had 3 heat waves kind of on the trot, and we're post that. And we're in this weird situation where it's still summer temperatures, right? But it just, you never know if it's going to rain or not. And when it does rain, it absolutely hammers it down. And then almost like a switch, it goes hot again. And then you look at your weather app and it says no more rain, but you look outside and it's chucking it down again. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. Anyway, question from Jonas London Guitar says, I've owned a Lazy J20 since 2008. Only maintenance it is needed, aside from some tubes, valves, is a new reverb tank which had nothing to do with the amp in the first place. This thing is as solid as they come, and it's the only one of my tube amps, valve, that hasn't needed to see a tech. Your work on the board looks pretty and certainly satisfies my OCD, but I wouldn't rewire an amp purely for an aesthetic reason or just in case of a potential future problem. Seems like a waste of time that ultimately the customer is paying for. Welcome, Jonas. Welcome to the channel. So should we go through that, shall we? So it seems like a waste of time that ultimately the customer is paying for. Well, thankfully, Jonas, it's not compulsory. It is optional. Customer doesn't have to have any of this work done if they don't want to. They're not being forced to. It's not required to. They can leave their amps exactly the way that they are, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But, and you know, I'm sure it's the case for a number of people. From my experience, having worked on so many of them, a lot of customers do have issues with those amplifiers, and those issues, those problems, all seem to be the same, which is blown mains transformers and scratchy pots, conductive boards, whatever. And they're pretty fed up, and they look for solutions, and they go on the internet and they find people like me who fairly show what these amplifiers are like inside, point out from both a legal standpoint and from a design best practice standpoint what these amplifiers are like, what the way they're built, what things need to be done to make them legal, what things could be done to improve them, and what things could be done to what we call preventative maintenance, things to stop these issues happening in the future, especially for those who rely on these things in a professional setting, touring musicians who take these things out on the road and need them to perform night after night. And as these amplifiers get older, we identify that there are these things that not just could happen but do happen. And if you're in a situation where your amplifier has failed, maybe not just once but multiple times, and you're getting a bit fed up with it, you find that there are solutions to these problems, and you might say, actually, I love the sound of the amplifier, but I've had reliability issues with it, and I'm prepared to spend X amount of money on it to get it more reliable. And that's what these people are deciding to do. As I said, it's not compulsory. You don't have to have it done. And if your amplifier has proven to be reliable over a long period of time, that's great. That's wonderful. That's what we want to see, right? But there are ones out there, and it's not just Lazy J amplifiers. There are other brands as well that we've shown, not just on this channel, but other techs have shown too, where there are what will be fair to say are fundamental design flaws in those amplifiers. I'm also thinking like Hot Rod Deluxes, for example, where spending a little bit of money on them, PV Classic 30 is another, where, again, spending a little bit of money on them and a little bit of time removes that element of doubt from your mind. Is this amplifier going to fail on me? And for those people, the cost of the service versus that peace of mind is worth it. absolutely worth it. And I think that's fair and reasonable, right? So that's what I'm going to say on that. Where you said I wouldn't rewire an amplifier for a purely aesthetic reason, well, that's not the case at all. We're not doing it to make it look nice. It's just that we can, because we care about the quality of our work. So anyway, thanks for your comment, Jonas. I really appreciate that. Hopefully I've answered your questions and queries. But if your amplifier does go down, please don't hesitate to give me a call and we'll sort you out. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. As always, please give this video a thumbs up. All your comments and questions down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you know when new videos come out. If you're feeling super generous like these guys were, why not join the channel, and I will catch you all at the next one. Right, progress. The socket is now all wired in, so turn the car on. It lights up and it does tell me the current voltage of the car. Looking good. Here it is. And I've got my display all mounted in now. I've just used, this is only a temporary solution. I just mounted some L brackets on, hopefully you can see that. And stuck it all down. It's pretty sturdy. Moves a little bit, but it'll be okay for the time being. I'll just get those L brackets remade up in thicker steel, so there'll be less vibration going on. But if we now plug in down there, turn the power on, we have power. It'll just boot up and do its thing. And the only thing I need to check is that when I actually start the car, it doesn't drop out, because then it resets all of your timing and data. So we'll let it just, come on, round you come. There we go. You see, I was last at Anglesey. We'll just start the car. And it shouldn't, if I've done this right, it shouldn't flicker on and off. Damn. Never mind. We'll have to have a rethink. Right, voltage should now be charging. Charging voltage 14.1. Very good. That's now booting up again. Okay. Very pleased with that. Very pleased with that indeed. So that's one thing ticked off the list. All the stuff I brought up with me. So I'm going to need to tidy it up all behind there. There are some dangly wires and stuff that I need sorting. And then we still need to work on where we're going to mount the kitchen timers. But this, now I've got this in, we're good for our track day. Because even though you can't do timing on a track day, you can have speed. So we can calibrate the speed at the GPS speed to the speedometer. I mean, the main thing you're trying to do is, if your speedo dies, you need to be able to know what RPM in a certain gear 60 kilometers an hour is, because that's the pit lane speed limit. So I know in the MX-5 third gear 4,000 RPM with the size of the wheels and the gear ratios and stuff, that is 60 kilometers an hour. In this it will be different. So if this speedometer ever dies, we need to know what RPM in what gear, and you have it in a little sticker there just to remind you. So that's one thing we need to do, and you calibrate it with a GPS thing rather than that. So yeah, that's that. Let's go back to lap timing mode. But yeah, that's all running fine now. That's all done. I'm really pleased with that. It's a nice install. I'm going to get a shorter cable and just route it nicely around here. We still need to do the radio kit as well. So I need to order a mount for the radio button, the new loom in, so we've got radio comms. But yeah, that's coming along quite nicely now.